Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to part 3 in this series of stop motion animation videos, and the last in this series. There may be some future stop motion videos to show some other techniques, but with this one we're going to wrap it up. We've gone through the stage setup in part 1, the green screen cleanup and keying in part 2, and in this one we're going to show you the full and completed animation and talk a little bit about backgrounds. But first, I just want to thank everybody who participated in the call for punchlines that I put out on Tumblr and on Facebook. We got a number of submissions and some really clever ones, and I just want to say I really enjoyed reading them all. I'm not going to read them out loud here, but I will copy and paste these into the video description so you can see the entries that came in. And one of these was picked, so if you want to find out who the winner is, just keep watching through the very end and I'm sure you'll recognize your idea. We did take some creative liberties with it, so it's not exactly the same suggestion, but we wouldn't have thought of it had it not been for this person. So that person is going to win a free armature, the wooden one that we've been using all along, this 12-inch biped. So given that so much time had elapsed since I did part 2 in the video, I had to reset up my stage, but whenever I do something over again, I always like trying to do it differently, just to test a different approach. And so one thought that had occurred to me was like, why instead of wrapping the foam around the neck of the crane, why not just attach it right behind the armature? That way wherever I move the armature, there's going to be a green screen behind it. Now obviously the problem with this is the shadows that are going to be cast directly on it, but I figured I'd give it a try and put it out there as a suggestion for yet another way to solve the problem of the crane arm being so visible. And I'm setting up my lights, trying to match the 3-point lighting setup I had before, but also trying to cancel out the shadows that I'm creating with the green foam. I did find another foam at the craft store which is a better matching color to the green board that is behind the character. So there I'm ready to basically pick up from where I left off. The biped was just sitting around, just waiting for something to happen, and now we're going to find out what happens. So there you have it. A9 was waiting to be shipped, and you know, the irony of this is that usually I find myself being in the position of the armature but waiting for the printers to be done making all the parts. So here you can see my entire sequence, and I'm going to go through this and dissect it so you can see what's going on. I'm going to start from the top layers and move my way down. So those little black ones are just black video that are used for the fade-ins and fade-outs to sort of convey passage of time. And then beneath that is the footage of me. You can see me there on the left, and the background. Now what's interesting about this piece is that this is the foreground element and the background element all in one. I basically have it in 2 pieces. I've copied one, put it in the front, and moved one in the back. The difference between the two is that the front one has a garbage mat on it, and I'm using that essentially to occlude, or basically select a portion of the footage to reveal in front, and so that I can give the illusion that I am covering the character when I reveal it at the beginning, and also when my arm goes in front of it as I'm reaching for tools and pieces to work on other armatures, supposedly, is what's going on there. So there you can see kind of my garbage mat animated and moving along just those key areas where I want to cover the armature, just to give the illusion that this is a foreground element. But in reality, it's all just one flat piece of footage. The nice thing about doing this is I didn't have to go through the trouble of filming myself against a green screen and then filming a separate background. I just filmed myself against my, in my studio, all in one shot, and I just copied it behind the armature, and then I put it also in front. Now here's a different scenario where I did actually record the feet or take pictures of the feet against the green screen when it was doing the tapping, and so I did have to key out that green and put different footage in the back and also some other footage in the foreground. That's also the case for this shot here, where I start teasing the armature with my hands. So there you can see the footage on the left where I filmed it against a green screen. I keyed that out, and then I recorded some blurred out video of the table and put that behind the armature. Now here's yet a third approach, which is essentially to animate the character in the environment that it's being shot at. Now this is a little bit tricky to do because here I'm having to take snapshots of myself as I'm moving in the environment and take snapshots of the armature animating to make it seem like we're both live at the same time. And that can be a little tricky, but fortunately A9 is a very stable armature, and so it can, as you can see here, it's holding its pose pretty nicely. I did use a little bit of clay, or I think I might have used a kneadable eraser under its feet just to help out a little bit, but it's so subtle you can't even tell, and I could have probably gone in there and erased it, but I didn't. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that at the very beginning, the footage of me there in the foreground on the left is actually just plain video, but in order to make it look like stop motion, what I did is I posterized it. There's actually a feature in Premiere that you can use for posterizing time, and it basically it drops out a lot of frames, and it only picks every so many frames depending on the settings that you have it set at. I set it to 3 frames per second. So for every second that elapses, it's going to pick 3 frames in even intervals. Now here's that shot that I was talking about earlier with the feet tapping. And because it was shot against the green screen, I did have to generate a backdrop for it. And I animated the backdrop a little bit just to make it feel like it was really interacting with the debris on the ground. And what I did there is I basically just filmed, again, I just filmed this backdrop, and I went in there with my finger and just moved the debris around, I think in maybe 4 or 5 different increments. And rather than taking different pictures, I just hit record and I filmed it, and I brought that footage in and I posterized it. As you can see in my timeline, it's sort of cut into 4 different pieces, and just picked exactly the pieces I wanted, and I made sure the timing coincided with the tapping of the foot. Now the shadow was kind of tricky. In order to do that, what I did is I took the same pictures from the armature against the green screen, and I took those frames and I worked with them in Photoshop, essentially grayscaled the images. So I took that green screen photographs. There was only like 8 of them because they all repeat, so it was pretty easy. I went in and turned them into grayscale, increased the contrast so that it became essentially black shadows against white. And then when I brought them into Premiere, I used the multiply blending mode to make them appear as if they were shadows affecting the background. This is footage of me recording sounds. So the boxing and the tapping on the table and the marking an X across the list of armatures and things of that sort. So it was a lot of fun. It didn't take very long. This is a really good example of how to put together a quick little story in just a couple days, and the Armature really provides you with this powerful storytelling tool, and hopefully with the last 3 videos you now know everything you need to know, all the technical stuff in order to get through this. But if you have any questions, if you run across any roadblocks, just leave the question in the comments. Send me a message on facebook.com/armature9 or email me at store@digitaldouble.com. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Congratulations to our winner. If you want to find out who was the lucky one that made the suggestion that A9 be waiting to be shipped, look at the comments. I put all the entries in there. So thanks for watching, guys. If you have suggestions for other tutorials, feel free to send them my way. Bye.